created you out of love for love. You are precious in my eyes. And if we're going to be people who are responsive to the presence of God, then we start to have eyes to see the world around us. Do you know that the Catholic Church is the only church, only faith, that cares about the marginated so much, the poor, that cares about creation and our whole world that we live in? Why? Because we believe it's a gift from God, and we've been called stewards to take care of it. And when we sit there in the beauty of a sunrise or a sunset, or some of you may love the beach or the mountains, it's breathtaking. It leaves you speechless. That's a prayer. Just to say thank you. I believe if you're going to be healthy people, we got to take care of ourselves. And you understand that, I think, from a physical point of view, exercise, diet. But what I really think is we got to look at our emotional self. One of the things on my voicemail that I started, my God, many, many years ago, but it's amazing how it affects people. At the end of the voicemail, when you leave me a message on my phone, I always say, hey, by the way, be good to yourself today. We don't think of doing that. We ain't got time. I'm sorry, but I think the Irish got a great saying. They say time is a gift from God. He gave us plenty of it. 24 hours a day, 168 hours a week, 5,726 hours in a lifetime. 57,000, I'm sorry. That's awesome. But do we see time as a gift? And are we taking time to think about expanding ourselves, our minds, whatever? And spiritually, just by reflecting on God's movement in your life. One of the neatest prayers I like to share with people that we teach at the center is called the Examen. St. Ignatius of Loyola actually said, this is the prayer. All it is taking 10 minutes, the last 10 minutes of your day, right before you go to bed. It's your own. I've never seen anybody not have that last 10 minutes. And before you close your eyes, just to go over your day and say, here's where I want to say thank you, here's where I want to ask for forgiveness, and here's where I'm going to need the grace tomorrow for what I'm going to face. That's real. That's what we do with friends. That's the intimacy that Jesus had with the Father. I think if we're going to be happy people, we really got to be able to know what truly gives life and meaning. In other words, where do you find real life right now? Because I think that's our goal. Jesus said, I came to give you life, not just life, but abundant life. And we're called by Jesus, I believe, to live a life that is holy, happy, and healthy. Now, how do we do that? Is there any books? Yeah, there is. There's one. And I'm going to give it to you as an exercise, candidates. And it might be something sponsors might want to do as well, and share what you come up with. You don't have to do this, and I'll never know if you did. But what I'd like to encourage you to do is pick a gospel of the four. Pick one of the three synoptics. Matthew, Mark, or Luke. Okay? I want you to find your best translation that speaks to you. And I want you to also go with a notepad and a pencil or pen. Now this will take you about 15 minutes, and it'll take you a period of 2 weeks to go through one gospel. If you read Mark's gospel, I don't want you to read any more than 4 or 5 chapters at a time. If you read Luke or Matthew, then you can go 5 or 6 chapters. But here's what I want you to do. I want you to, first of all, come to a place where you can be quiet. All the noise factors got to get out. And just hold that beautiful scripture in your hands. And then when you're ready, open it and start reading whatever gospel you've chosen. And then when you've read the 5 or 6 chapters or the 4 or 5 chapters, I want you to put it down, and I want you to react to what you are reading. Who is this Jesus you're meeting? Some of you might be meeting him for the first time. This isn't the guy with the gold thing on his head that we always point out. What do you feel when you read this Jesus? How does he strike you? Does he make you comfortable, uncomfortable? This is not a grammar test. I don't care about syntax. All I care about is getting your feelings and emotions. How do you react to the Jesus you've met and what you just read? And when you've written everything you want to say, just close it. Don't analyze it. Don't do anything. A couple days later, come back and do another 5 or 6 chapters. You can read a gospel in 20 minutes. This way, it'll take you about 2 weeks. And as Father Jim Breslin said so well in a book called Christianity Rediscovered, we usually come already preoccupied when we come to the gospel because we know the outcome of the stories. You know, Jesus goes on a picnic with 5,000 people and he feeds them all. Or he goes to a wedding feast and he doesn't embarrass the bride and groom. Or his nagging Jewish mother jumps in. We know the story. But now you're going to come at it from your perspective. What do you love about this Jesus? What strikes you? Why am I asking you to do that? Because he is a living example from God the Father and the Spirit of what God is like and who God is. And if you want to know what it means to be a cold, bold, courageous person of faith that you're going to profess you want to be through your confirmation, there's no better role model. Because Jesus was fully human as well as being fully divine. So he has every feeling, every question, every emotion you have, he has gone through. And the reason I want you to think about that experience is all of a sudden, Jesus realized that he is inviting us into a relationship with him and the kind of life he lived. Where people mattered. Where you treat each other with dignity and respect. We don't live in a culture like that now. We live in a culture now that says, I need to be right more than I need to be in right relationship with people. Do you know in our over 200-year history, we've only known violent resolution? We cannot sit down at a table and discuss two differences and say, let's talk until we come to what we're both after. Can't do that. Somebody has to be right and somebody has to be wrong. Jesus never dealt that way. And what does it mean to say he loved and cared for each other? It seems that everybody mattered. And again, look at who God chose to hang with. Hardly the who's who of the church. Prostitutes, thieves, tax collectors, nobodies. And he said to such as these, the kingdom belongs. Now the reason I share that with you is you got to know Jesus. I think we've done a great job in our church. This is a Cucchettiism, so you don't have to buy it. I think we've done a great job in our church teaching about Jesus. But do we know him? Now to know him in a Jewish tradition means you've experienced that person in your life. I want to give you an opportunity as you prepare to say yes to God and to this church to have that opportunity. So I just offer to you to try. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a quote from Scripture that I'd like to think for a moment. It's a story you've heard many times. But I'd like you to just think how you honestly would respond. This comes from the Gospel of Luke. Once, when Jesus was praying alone with only his disciples near him, after he was done praying, he asked them this question. Who do the crowds say that I am? Well, they answered, John the Baptist. Some others said Elijah, and still others said one of the ancient prophets that have risen from the dead. He then said to them, but who do you say I am? Peter answered, you are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. What I'd like to do now is ask the candidates and sponsors again to pair off. And I'd like you to share your honest response to what you just heard in the reading. In other words, I want you to say, where you are right now in your life, who do you say Jesus is? And I'd like the sponsors to go first so the candidates can think a little bit. I'll give you about 5 minutes. Once the sponsors are finished, candidates, you may share your answer to that question. The reason that I chose this passage, in Matthew's gospel, it's the high point. It reaches, the beginning of it goes up to this question, and then it descends and it answers the question. In Luke's gospel, there's an interesting thing that happens, which I'll share with you in a minute. But this passage is interesting because we had this encounter between Jesus and his most intimate friends, and he asks just a general question at the beginning. Who do the crowd say that I am? And after hearing what the apostles have to say, Jesus changes the question and makes it very personal. But who do you say that I am? And Peter jumps right up, as he always does. You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. Now, just a few verses after this, in Luke's gospel, Jesus says to them, very sternly, not to tell anyone what just happened. Now, I don't know about you, but if I'm going to the fish market after I had this encounter, you bet I'm going to be telling somebody at the bar. You'll never guess what I just found out. But he tells her not to do that. Because Jesus, even though this is somewhat confusing, because in one sense you think he'd say, Peter, way to go, good job. You got it. But what he is saying is, I need to know from you something more. I need to know what you believe about me. And the reason that he tells everyone, I don't want you to go out and tell everybody about it, is because by the way I live my life should tell you who I am. How many of you here are going to take a confirmation name of the candidates? Okay, a few of you think so. All right. The reason I asked that, the church says you can take your baptismal name, or you can pick a second name if you so choose. I'm going to give you a little Jewish lesson. Look up what your name means. Because Jewish people believe we act like the person we're named after.